Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I hope you are having a good time. If you are one of the people who like a forbidden love story, romantic drama, or a true love story, especially during segregation and Jim Crow laws in the U.S., this short love story could be for you. I hope you like this short love story, which is part of the love life of a black man and a white woman during the time in which interracial marriages were prohibited by law. And let's talk also about the application of Jim Crow laws and racial segregation in one of the major cities in the southern United States. As the case of the city of Montgomery in Alabama, New Orleans in Louisiana, Atlanta in Georgia, and let's not talk about Charlotte, North Carolina. If you like this story of interracial love or interracial romance, when the main characters have different skin color, this story is full of the conflicts, challenges, and emotional dramas which could be the center of attention of this dramatic story of forbidden love, where the plot will have an ending that you may not have expected. A story in which you will be able to know the inner thoughts, each of his dreams, fantasies, fears, dilemmas, mixed emotions, and frustrations due to the skin color of a black man who falls in love with the wrong woman at the wrong time. Why are black men forbidden to love white women during racial segregation in the United States? If you want to know the answer, please listen to the dramatic story of a forbidden love between a black man who is deeply in love with a white woman who is stealing the heart of a black man without her knowing it. A type of love considered delusional by some and unattainable by others. Historically, everyone knows that in 1776, 7 of the 13 colonies enforced laws against interracial marriage, although slavery was gradually abolished in the North after independence. That tells you that you should look at this forbidden love story taking into account this historical reality, where blacks had fewer rights than whites, which made this relationship between a black man named William and a white woman named Emily something prohibited by anti-miscegenation laws in the southern pro-slave states. This story of forbidden love is centered on William James, a black man born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1895, and Emily, a beautiful white woman who works in her father's bakery, who had to take the public bus every day to get to work, the same public bus that William James takes. This public bus is the place where both, unknowingly, are part of a forbidden love story during Jim Crow laws enforcing racial segregation in the southern United States. Norm of conduct, which prohibited a black man from having any type of social or marital relationship with a white woman, based on racial miscegenation laws, which considered the relationship between a black man and a white woman as a crime. As you can see, I will tell you a little about the story of a forbidden love between people who belong to a different world, people with different skin colors, but also people who are governed by different laws. The love story of a man who falls in love with the wrong woman at a wrong time, as is the case of William James, a black man, and Emily, a beautiful, educated, and nice white woman, who, without her knowing it, was the center of attention of the fantasies of a black man who dreamed of having her in his arms. Sometimes I wonder if all people, regardless of racial type or skin color, have the right to choose the partner their heart chooses at any given time. It is a question that William James sometimes asks his heart, and more so when the answer he's looking for is not found in his mind. William thinks that when you live in a society controlled by whites, such as American society in the era of racial segregation, in which whites live under the motto, equal but separated, the black never achieves his dreams, and more, when included, make the heart of a white woman fall in love. William, looking into the distance, says with a certain expression of uncertainty on his face, "At least in my daydreams, no one controls what my imagination sees. In my dreams, she is my queen, and I am her servant who fulfills all her wishes." You, who are listening to this impossible love story that is controlling the thoughts, behaviors, and feelings of a black man, which are sometimes considered as conflicted, obsessive, and sometimes pleasant. And William must understand that when you fall in love with someone, your heart is in control, not the limitations socially imposed under Jim Crow laws, racial segregation, and the imposition of laws against miscegenation. The cruelest way in which a human being can inflict on another human being when it comes to racial discrimination against blacks in the history of the American nation are the great obstacles and challenges to overcome, to be equal to others, to have the same rights as others, but above all to have the possibility to love the woman who controls your heart, no matter her skin color. According to William James, there is nothing worse for blacks who have to obey the Jim Crow laws for fear of being punished. And let's not talk about the anti-miscegenation laws that considered this type of behavior a serious crime in a large majority of the southern states of the American territory, as a way to control the behavior of blacks like him. A question William James asks in a low voice: how must blacks feel when they are denied the right to decide who to marry and who not? Knowing the answer, maybe that's why William James, when he thinks about the love of his life, the limitations that those social norms impose on a black man like him, when he is in love with a white woman, are difficult to accept, in which the only impediment is their skin color. Sometimes William James, as a result of his love situation, has many ideas in his head, but he also feels like a black man in a strange land who lives in a territory that does not belong to him, but considers that he cannot choose the path that he must travel, because even for that, the whites are the ones who decide, and even more so when they have control of these territories colonized by their European ancestors. Some who know about American history say that slavery ended with the Declaration of Independence and the emancipation of the slaves. But it is something that William James does not believe, because black people are still seen and treated as second-class people. They don't even have the right to marry the woman their heart loves, let alone the right to truly be free. When one listens to the great sages, who always say, "In matters of the heart, the mind never commands," I wonder if this great sage who said that great truth lives in a society where skin color, social class, the type of God that you worship, is taken into account, and more when you are a black man who is deeply in love with a white woman in a society where blacks are considered less than human. William only knows that her name is Emily, a white woman, beautiful as spring flowers, with soft gold hair, with a soft tone of voice and a smile that enchants everyone who knows her. A white-skinned woman who, without her knowing it, has control of his heart, but also of his life. As a black man, a product of the Jim Crow laws, in which we are prohibited from looking into the eyes, greeting, speaking, or addressing a white woman, much less trying to win her heart, you have no chance of conquering the heart of a white-skinned woman during the time of racial segregation. That was a fact. Maybe this is the reason why many times William James thinks that he is living in a wrong time, in a wrong nation, but also his heart is silently grieving for a wrong woman, and all because that woman is white, a woman who may never know that he exists. Some family and friends tell William James, as a way to comfort him in his impossible love, a black woman has everything a white woman can offer. But, in his particular case, he can't control what his heart feels, which some see as a basket case, of someone who has lost his way and lives in a world controlled by impossible dreams of a black man who does not accept his place in a white society. Sometimes he spends hours dreaming in silence what his life would be if this love for a white woman could be possible, but reality reminds him that this love, if possible, could be death or several years in jail, because at this moment the union between a black man and a white woman is prohibited. Every day when William James commutes to work, blacks always sit in the back seats because the front seats are reserved for whites. Every morning he looks forward to when she gets on the bus. She takes her seat in front of him, as if reminding him of his place in this white-controlled society. Emily, with a smile, she greets everyone except the blacks who are sitting in the back seats, including the black man who is the main character of this story of a forbidden love. If Emily knew everything that his heart wants to tell her, maybe his life at this moment, it would be much easier to cope with this emotional frustration of an impossible love, but also forbidden. But he must be silent, because a black like him is forbidden to feel love for a white woman in the Jim Crow era, during racial segregation in the United States, and even more when you talk about the states of Georgia and Alabama. Sometimes he imagines her smile, pretending that he is the reason for her. He listens carefully when she talks about her, as if she were addressing him in that special moment. He believes in his mind thousands of fantasies in which that beautiful white woman with soft hair, she is the queen, and he is her king, running the two holding hands forever in a flower garden that is endless, where their love is possible, but also where racial differences are not taken into account. But he also wakes up when the bus makes its last stop, as if to say that it is time to finish his fantasy and walk to work. Always with the same suppressed emotion, because as a black man, he is forbidden to say what he really feels about her. As always, as a black man, he arrives at work much earlier than the white workers, although William must always use the back door as the only entrance for all black workers. Even in that we are different. But he must also use a bathroom for blacks, because in a society controlled by whites, as dark-skinned people, they are only to obey. Despite the hard work, some friends tell him that you are a happy Negro because you have a job. If they all knew that the only reason why he endures the harshness of this job is because he has the opportunity to be close to the woman his heart loves, even for a few minutes every morning. Someone told to William James that a black man had the audacity to flatter a white woman, and several days later he appeared hanging, or rather lynched, in one of the largest trees that exist in this city, which is in the preferred place of blacks who venture to visit this part of the city at a time when blacks are seen as thieves, people without education, but mostly lazy and dirty blacks who wait for the first opportunity to steal. Every time you listen this type of lynching against blacks, it is something that creates panic in many of them. It's a cruel way for white people to show who is in control. Anti-black crimes, which are one of the things that no one investigates, punishes, or condemns, because blacks are second-class people. Any black who dares not respect Jim Crow laws could suffer the same fate in which death by lynching is the method most used by groups that rely on the idea of supremacy of whites over blacks, as a way to preserve the purity and control of the white race above black and colored people. But, for some reason, this method of intimidation does not scare William, who is willing to give his life for the woman he loves. The only problem is that this woman is white. For some reason that we all know, he doesn't know how to solve this dilemma. Many times he looks up to heaven, as if waiting for God, even once, to allow this love to become a reality. But no matter all his prayers, it is something that seems impossible as long as a black man does not accept that feeling love for a white woman is not allowed according to Jim Crow laws. It is something that God has not been able to change. When he speaks of black men who are in love with a white woman during the time of racial segregation in the United States. As a black man, yesterday was the worst day of his life, in which all his dreams could have been possible, even for a moment, in which he had the opportunity to see that woman in the eye for the first time, a white woman that is stealing his heart. And why not tell her everything he feels for her with a look, a few words, a nice greeting, when she was walking down the street. Suddenly, at the end of the street, he noticed Emily's presence, who was heading in the opposite direction. William does not know if it was the nerves of a rookie in love or the fear of Jim Crow laws, but his heartbeat was racing. His feet felt heavy, and for some reason, as if it were a self-preservation instinct, he crossed the street. Because during the racial segregation laws, blacks must give way to white people to avoid any type of interaction with blacks. Yesterday, William James lost the best opportunity to tell Emily how he feels about her. But fear overcame the immense love he has for a white woman, and even more so when the images of lynching any black man who dares to come to mind. When a black man talks about love to a white woman. Despite what happened, his heart still beats and his mind is full of confusion. But he took refuge in what could be, if fear had not taken control at that moment. Sometimes he wonders if the love of a woman is worth the life of a black man during racial segregation and Jim Crow laws. As a black man, they are so used to being controlled by the laws of white men. Perhaps that is why many times he wonders, when he thinks of Emily, the platonic love that controls his heart, if it is possible that white men can also control and know what does a black man think. That is something that scares him. But like a fool in love, he also believes in everything that brings happiness to his heart. Because there could be the possibility that that white woman who controls his heart has the power to read his thoughts and to know his emotions. Many times he wonders if Emily knows that she is the center of attention of a black man who loves her madly. But he is afraid to say everything he feels. Something or someone in my mind tells me, "Tell her how you feel." But he's too scared to hear that inner voice, no matter how long it persists. Maybe that's why he's the only one responsible for being in love with someone who doesn't know it. Because of the black code, or because of his lack of courage. Perhaps that is why I am the only one responsible for being in love with someone who does not know it. For the black code that everyone obeys without question. A black man does not fall in love with a white woman. Or for his lack of courage to express to the world how he feels about these irrational laws that affect only black people. There is nothing worse than a man madly in love with an unattainable and forbidden love. When he listens and looks at all the things that are in his mind, but also the world of possibilities that only exist in his imagination, where the fantasies seem to be real, but neither there is a difference between dreams and possibilities. But when you talk about love, you never know. In his case, as a black man in the days of Jim Crow, he believes he has an idea of what will happen. You must understand, for dreams to become a reality in an interracial relationship during racial segregation, for a white woman to fall in love with a black man, there are so many challenges to overcome for her that very few dare to defy social criticism and family refusal to such prohibited relationships. Emily is a woman with white skin, blonde hair, beautiful, educated, wears expensive clothes typical of a lady of the time, who enchants with her smile, her tender look, and a soft tone of her voice. She is like a star difficult to reach for everyone, and more when we talk about a black man that may be in love with the wrong woman. Many times, William looks at her with the eyes of his heart, as if she is in front of him. He hears her voice and pays attention to her as if she is talking to him. He feels the soft skin of her hands every time she greets others, even though she is sitting in the front seats of the bus. But self-deception is part of being in love with the white woman during racial segregation. Nobody doubts when a black man who is madly in love or infatuated by the beauty and delicacy of a white woman who is not within his reach. Daydreaming is something that is expected in those imaginary moments, which serve as food for the lonely spirit. And let's not talk about the uncontrollable desire to be close to that special woman who steals your heart without knowing it, like the case of William James in the presence of Emily. So close, yet too far away for a black man in love. For William, Emily is an unreachable love in real life, which is only possible in the fantasy images of a man in love with the wrong woman, according to society, but not her heart. When William is in front of the woman he loves, whom he can only look at in his imagination, because it is forbidden to look her in the eye directly without the company of a man, much less express what he feels for her, because the love relationship between a black man and a white woman is forbidden morally and socially, and it's penalized by the miscegenation law. Sometimes his fantasies get out of control, and he imagines things that are reserved for two lovers madly in love. His hands touching her hands, his lips kissing her lips, his skin touching her skin, and their bodies dancing in a night of dreams and desires. But those dreams sometimes scare him, and he wakes up sweaty and anguished, but also disappointed, when no one is by his side, because it was just a dream with an impossible love. Some will say that we are all equal, perhaps because we can all dream of achieving the impossible. But when it comes to separate but equal, there is a law for white people and another law for black people. There are many things that blacks can never achieve while the black code is applied, especially when a black man cannot look a white woman in the eye, much less walk through the park holding hands and go to the theater to watch their favorite movie, much less sit together on the train and drink water from the same source. But he knows that everything is a fantasy of the moment, product of the heart of a black man who refuses to accept that he is in love with the wrong woman, but also at the wrong time, because a white woman is forbidden to love a black man. As a human being, the last thing you should lose is the hope that your dreams, however impossible they may be, may one day come true. Maybe that's why hope is still part of William James's life, when he thinks of Emily, in which she is his queen, and he is a servant who fulfills all her wishes. Can Emily feel love for a black man like him? It is a question that he does not dare to know the answer right now, and that is why he preferred to live every morning with the fantasy that everything is possible. when he talks about things of love. William doesn't believe in fairy tales, where love conquers all, and all the characters in that fairy tale are happily ever after. For William, dreaming of being the main actor in those fairy tales scares him, because even in his daydreams, the right to love the woman his heart chooses is also denied during racial segregation, because his skin color is black. It is possible that Emily feels for him the same as he feels for her, that this impossible love story is possible, a love story with a happy ending. It is a story that fills with hope in a colorblind world. But let's face it, at the time of racial segregation in the United States, this romance story will never be written as long as there are racial differences between a black man and a white woman, while one racial group feels superior to another racial group. It is possible that love can defeat all, and racism will not be the exception. But despite everything, Emily, a white woman, someone who William James only knows by name, every morning when she gets on the bus, she makes a black man happy without realizing it, knowing it, because that black man is forbidden to say it or show the woman who is unknowingly controlling the heart of the one who is living this story of impossible love. Many will say that this is a sad love story, but I do not feel that way, because despite everything, Emily every morning brings a little happiness to William without knowing it, and that is what matters. In another video in the future, we will continue with the second chapter of this impossible love story between a black man and a white woman during racial segregation in the United States. If you like this short love story of a forbidden love, let me know in your comments. As a way of continuing to tell this kind of story, I really appreciate that you have visited this channel and enjoyed this love story.